In this video, we are going to see how do you solve a quadratic equation by factorization method. Okay, so what we are going to learn in this video is what is the root of a quadratic equation and how do you solve a quadratic equation by factorization method. Let us say, for example, you have a quadratic equation 4x squared minus 6x plus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, this is a quadratic equation because the highest power of the variable x is 2. Now let's say we say that the value of x is equal to 1. When I substitute the value of x is equal to 1 in this particular equation, what I get is 4 times 1 square, because it is x, minus 6 times 1 plus 2 is equal to 0. Or in other words, simply I get 4 times 1 minus 6 plus 2 is equal to 0. Right? I'm just solving the left hand side for the time being, which is like now 4 minus 6 plus 2 is equal to, it's actually equal to 0, which is the right hand side of this equation. So what does this mean? This means that the value of x at 1 makes the value of this equation equal to the right hand side. For x is equal to 1, the left hand side of the equation is equal to the right hand side, and therefore we say that 1 is actually the root of this quadratic equation. We also say that 1 is the 0. I mean, both these terms in this case refer to the value at 1. In other words, basically for any quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, okay, we can say that where a is not equal to 0. The reason is for saying that a is not equal to 0 is that the moment a is equal to 0, this equation will become 0 times x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Now the 0x squared would actually cancel out and we will left with only this. The moment the power of the variable, the highest power, is not equal to 2, this does not remain a quadratic equation. So we say that the value of a is not equal to 0. In such a case, alpha, okay, alpha, for any root alpha, we say that alpha is a root of this equation if a alpha square, which is x squared, plus b alpha plus c is equal to 0. When we substitute any value, okay, which we are calling here as alpha in this equation, and the right hand side actually becomes 0, we say that alpha is the root of that given quadratic equation. The thing is that a cannot be equal to 0. B could be 0, C could be 0, but a cannot be equal to 0. And we also say that x is equal to alpha, in this case where alpha was the root, is also the solution of the quadratic equation which is given to us over here. Now if you remember earlier in the quadratic polynomial, we had studies that a quadratic polynomial cannot have more than 2 roots. So the maximum roots of a quadratic polynomial is equal to 2, right? Which means that even a quadratic equation cannot have more than 2 roots. Okay? What does this mean? That there cannot be more than 2 values which satisfy this equation, whereby the left hand side actually becomes equal to the right hand side, which is 0. Now having said this, let us see how do you solve a quadratic equation by factorization. So you have been given an equation x squared plus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. So how do you solve a quadratic equation? It is simple. If I just compare this with a standard form of equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, I get a is equal to 1, I get b is equal to 5, and I get c is equal to 6. Isn't it? Now in order to solve this equation, what I need to do is that the middle term, okay, which is this, has to be splitted into 2 terms such that their sum is equal to the middle term. So let's say, for example, in this case, the middle term is 5x, right? I need to find out two sums such that their total is equal to 5x, right? So which are these terms? I can write 5x as 1x plus 4x, right? I can write 5x as 2x plus 3x, right? So these are the two ways in which I can write this particular number. But which one do I choose? I need to split this middle term into two parts, okay? And those two parts could be either of these two. But how do I choose them? The first part is I just split them. The second rule is the parts which have been chosen, okay, the sum which has to be chosen, the product of these two should be equal to the product of the first and the third number, right? So if I multiply x square is the first term which we have, times 6, which is the second thing, I get 6x squared. So the combination that I need to choose out of these two, their product has to be equal to 6x squared. Now we know 4x into x is going to give us 4x squared, whereas 3x into 2x gives us 3x into 2x gives us 6x squared. So I am going to choose this second part over here. So what I will do is I will write this equation as x squared plus 3x plus 2x. I've just splitted this 5x into two parts, plus 6 is equal to 0. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange these parts into two different things. So one is x squared plus 3x, the other one is 2x plus 6. Between these two numbers, what is common? We'll take that out, x. We will get x plus 3. Between the next two, what is common? 2. So I will put 2 over here. 2 into x gives us 2x plus 3. Now if you notice, what is going to happen is you have x plus 3 over here and x plus 3 over here, right? And by the simple rules that we have learned in our junior classes maybe, we can write that if 2 times a plus 3 times a can be written as a and the sum of these two numbers, 5 times a. So I can simply write this as x plus 2, which is x plus 2 times x plus 3 is equal to 0. Now another interesting aspect. Whenever we have the product of two numbers a and b as 0, we say either of these two numbers have to be 0. If they are not, then their product cannot be equal to 0. So what this means is that either x plus 2 is equal to 0 or x plus 3 is equal to 0. So we write x plus 2 is equal to 0 or x plus 3 is equal to 0, which means that x is equal to minus 2 or x is equal to minus 3. So these two are the solution of the quadratic equation x squared plus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. And I can prove that for you. If you take x is equal to minus 2, what do you get here? Minus 2 square, which is 4, plus 5 times x. X is what? Minus 2. Minus 2 into 5 gives you minus 10 plus 6. And what's the answer? 6 plus 4 is 10, minus 10 is equal to 0. So effectively, what I've got is the value equals to 0 for x is equal to minus 2. And we say x is equal to minus 2 is a solution or the root of a quadratic equation, which we have found out through factorization. So what are some of the learnings that we had from this video? We came to know that a quadratic equation can have at the most two roots. What are roots? Roots are the values of x or the variable for which the quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c becomes equal to 0. The roots of the equation are also called its zeros or the solutions. In order to find out the solution of a quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c, we need to split the middle term bx in such a manner so that it is equal to the splitted part is equal to the product of ax squared and c, right? Once we do that, we just rearrange them in a manner that you get basically two broad numbers which are multiplying with each other such that their product is equal to 0. And then by equating both these numbers or the variables or the part as equal to 0, we get the value for x. And to find whether we are correct or not, we can just use this value, put it in the quadratic equation and get the value as 0. I would like to end here with a quotation from Mr. Oscar Wilde, which said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." In this world where people are trying to compete with each other to a large extent, okay, try to be what you are and you'll be successful. We cannot copy or imitate others.